Adam Caplan, SiriusXM NFL Radio, and, of course, the Inside the Birds podcast at Caplan NFL. He'll join us each week. Right now, he joins us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline as the Eagles. I guess, Adam, we got to start with Doug Peterson said it the other day. He thinks this might be his deepest team since he has been here for the fourth season now. Do you agree that this is the deepest Eagles team we've seen in the Peterson era?
Mike, good to be with you today. Yes, I do. In fact, what's interesting, though, Jeff Mosher and I did a little roster review in, I think, June or July for our Inside the Birds podcast, and we actually graded the Cowboys roster better overall, but the difference was the coaching and the quarterback. We think Wentz is way better, and the roster is definitely very close, but coaching and quarterbacks are the two most important things in the National Football League, and the Eagles have both of them. And that's why they will win the NFC East. That's
interesting because I opened up today by saying I think Dallas is just right there, neck and neck with Philly. And, of course, our listeners don't like to hear that. But I think this Dallas team is pretty deep and pretty talented, and they bring Elliott in, which I don't think is much as a surprise. I think these two teams, you're going to get a preview on how much of a difference there is in the NFC East in Week 1. They all play each other.
Yeah, and it's amazing how one player changes everything. Because talk of the Cowboys, Mike, their offense revolves around the running back, not the quarterback, whereas I think here it's clearly the quarterback and not the running back. So the running backs are a function of how Wentz plays and how things could open up when the passing game's going. It's just a different philosophy. Both have good defenses. I think the Cowboys are a little bit better, certainly in the front seven. Mm-hmm. I think it's close. I would agree with you. I think it's going to be very close this season. This is going to remind me of when you and I were growing up, Mike, when in the 80s – and then in the 90s with Buddy Ryan, before Buddy Ryan left, and prior to Andy Reid getting there, when it was really close between both teams, and then obviously Dallas, as we know in the 70s, was dominant in part of the 80s. This is good. I like when both teams are really good because it brings back such a great rivalry.
Yeah, Adam, I want to get into some of the approaches this year. We know Eagles and Dallas, two teams we both believe, I think, are going to be there in the end. For the Eagles to get there, their talent on offense, how do you see it? Do you see this team as a pass-heavy team? Are they going to run the ball more? Is it going to be more of a split? I mean, what is Doug Peterson? I mean, he's got a lot of choices here. A lot of people are wondering, how's he going to keep everybody happy?
Yeah, look, Mike, they are passing offense. Don't let anyone fool you. Their numbers, and I actually looked this up. Their Super Bowl year, they were a heavy pass in the first half. What was they looked balanced because they would get up and they would be up at half. So they run the ball a lot. That's what you're supposed to do. You pass the score to run the win. This is what Joe Banner, the former president of the Eagles, really wanted Andy Reid to do. Andy Reid bought in. Doug Peterson has bought in. It's going to be much the same. Now, the difference is last year they were so beat up, as you know, at running back. When Darren Sproles has to have 13 carries in your playoff game against the Bears, that can't happen. That won't happen this year because they're loaded with Miles Sanders and Howard and. Corey Clement, by the way, is back. He's back from his LCL injury. He's healthy, looks great. They're loaded at running back. This looks like, by the way, the Deuce Staley-led running back by committee with Wendell Smallwood. You remember Deuce Staley and Brian Westbrook. This is what we're going to see a lot of this season. Although I think Miles Sanders eventually is probably going to take over, be their main back by midseason or after.
Right. Now, do you put any stock or read the tea leaves at all that the Eagles offered Howard in a pick, I guess, to swap with Melvin Gordon? Is that just Howie Roseman being Howie Roseman?
The latter. That's what, Howie's made it very clear that he always makes calls. He wants to see what's out there, who's available. The Chargers have made Melvin Gordon available for a while now. This is not anything new. The offer that Albert Breer reported from the Monday Morning Quarterback, he put it out there, and it's just kind of funny because Melvin Gordon is so much more talented than Howard. I mean, it's just not even close. I couldn't imagine Tom Telesco, the general manager for the Chargers, taking more than like a minute to even to just reject it out of hand. The only difference is there's a $3.4 million about disparity in salary, but that's it. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, Jordan Howard's a nice player, and he'll help them because he's got size, and he'll be the closer for this team. That's the way that they want it to happen. But the thing, though, think about this, Mike. Let's just say, for argument's sake, they made this trade. Would they ever extend Melvin Gordon? Because Melvin Gordon wants a new deal, and then you have to ask yourself, well, why did you spend a second-round pick on Miles Sanders? So it would complicate matters if they did indeed make this trade, which I think is very, very remote.
All right, good point. Adam Caplan, SiriusXM NFL Radio, Inside the Birds podcast with Jeff Mosher at Caplan NFL. Any issues in the building with all the guys who have not played, not due to not playing, but being injured? Fletcher, Nigel, Darby. You got a lot of guys. I mean, and we've talked a little bit about, Brandon Graham played last year, but he wasn't himself right off the bat. That injury kind of slowed him down. They got a lot of guys in a similar. Brandon Brooks, another one. Is there any concern about these guys who have not played, not because they just didn't play because of safety or not wanting these guys to play, but because they were actually injured?
Mike, 6 of their 11 starters on defense are coming back from significant surgery or significant injury. That includes Kamu Grugier-Hill, who won't be ready, who has grade 3 MCL sprain. I think it's a problem. You can't expect their defense, though they have a great opponent this week. It sets up for their defense to play well. But you can't expect their defense to be where it's going to be mid-season. It's just going to take some time. I'm glad you brought that up because that's actually a subject which I brought up with Jeff Mosher in our podcast, which will drop within the next hour, I think. We talk about this exclusively. We go into it. It's going to be a problem for them because you don't. How in the world do you know how Ronald Darby is going to do coming back from his ACL reconstruction? Roddy McLeod had ACL reconstruction and an MCL sprain and a cleanup, I'm told. Bradham with the ligament toe surgery. That's a concern. You don't know how he's going to run, and he's made it clear that he's not ready. Like he's not ready mentally, probably. Physically, I'm told the injury is healed, but he's had some pain in it. Grugier-Hill, we mentioned, it won't be ready. Brandon Graham, a great point, Mike. Last year, this time he wasn't himself. Fletcher Cox coming back from the foot surgery. That's 6 players, man. Yeah. I mean, that you can't expect it to be the same.
Adam, real quick on, you talked about Sanders, Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, he seemed to be the one guy who really stood out in some games. Did he show enough in games and in camp where he has forced the Eagles to find ways to use him, or is he just so far behind the depth chart that he's not going to be able to make an impact?
Mike, he did a great job. I mean, he did all that he could, but this is not a team that's going to run a lot of 4 receiver sets like the Arizona Cardinals do, which will primarily be a 4 and 5 receiver team. It's crazy what they're going to do. He'll help them in the red zone. They're going to go with a size package in the red zone. Jeffrey Arcega-Whiteside, or Ortega, I should pronounce it correctly, with Zach Ertz, with Dallas Goedert. That's their size package. They're going to have a speed package. You're going to see which they ran it with Miles Sanders. Darren Sproles is playing in the slot. Look at my notes here. Obviously, Deshaun Jackson, they're going to leash him. You're going to see a lot of things that you didn't see in the preseason. Some of them, it's probably going to be Arcega-Whiteside in the red zone. I think you're on the right track there.
Last one for Adam Caplan here. What about tight end? Ertz and Goddard, you just kind of hinted at, but Ertz had 107 catches last year. How much does his production go down, and how much more of Goddard do we see?
Well, I'll tell you, for fantasy football, people will play it. I passed on Ertz this year in the 3rd round. Last year I drafted in 4 out of 5 leagues in the 3rd round. I drafted in the 4th round this year because I still think he'll have around 90. My number was 90 last year, and of course he eclipsed that, as you said.
By the way, it was 116.
Going to be the big reason.
I shorted him by 9. It was 160, not 107.
It was 160, whatever the heck it was. It was an NFL record, by the way. I'd said on our podcast last November that this would be an off-season project for the coaches, and it was. And Doug Peterson admitted it. It wasn't about them running 12 personnel, with 2 tight ends. Or just getting them on the field. They got him on the field. They just didn't get him the ball enough. Their project was to get him the football, and they're going to get him the football a lot. I'm predicting 45 to 50 catches for Goddard this season.
All right. NFL season's back tomorrow night. Listen to it. Packers and Bears, 97.3 ESPN. Adam Caplan at Caplan NFL on Twitter. Jeff Mosher and Adam have the Inside the Birds podcast, which they record right here in our studios, and that drops tonight, so you can listen to that. And, of course, Adam is a part of SiriusXM NFL Radio's coverage. He'll be a part of our coverage this season right here, Wednesdays on the Sports Bash. Adam, appreciate it, pal.
Mike, thank you.
All right, and all guests like Adam Caplan appear via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.